Good morning. How is everybody? Any hangovers in the room? Hey, good. Oh, there's a half hangover. Is that a half hangover or? Cool. Okay. My name is Chris, and I am an adversarial engineer. I didn't make up that job title. It's a very American job title, and I work for an American company. It basically means I'm a red teamer. I have been working in pen testing for too many years. I think it's about 8. And before that, I was in the blue team. I do a lot of social engineering, and I saw some stuff that I thought was quite interesting, and this is exactly what the talk is going to be about. Now, this is about a murder. There's no murder mystery. This is a genuine, real murder that happened in 2010 in Dubai. And what was really interesting is it was captured on CCTV. And so I'm going to show you about the murder. I'm not going to focus very much on the murder because murder is bad, obviously, and I'm not a murderer myself, and I don't advocate murdering either. So I'm going to stay away from that. And I'm just going to focus on the social engineering techniques. But the social engineering techniques that they used were so good that they literally got away with murder. Now, when I talk about social engineering, one of the things that often comes up in the questions afterwards or in the hallway and things like that is, how can I get into social engineering? How can I do it? And it's really difficult, in fairness. In one of my previous jobs, I was really lucky, and I had 2 people who were interested in social engineering come out on a job with me and shadow and learn what I did. Now, that was fantastic, but it's quite rare. So the other thing that you can do is obviously go to training classes and learn and study and things like that. Or, as we can do here, we're lucky enough to be able to watch it in the wild, which is quite rare. And as I said, shadowing someone can be difficult because, it's a high stress, high tension type situation when you're trying to get into something that you shouldn't really be getting into. So it's quite difficult shadowing, but it is possible to do. Not many people get the opportunity. So, it's good. So, as I mentioned, I found some CCTV footage which might help, and I'm trying to pick out just the social engineering techniques, as I mentioned. I was lucky enough to be here in 2018, and I did a talk about the basics of social engineering, which might also help. Now, I'm going to reference that talk in here, but you don't need to have seen it to know what I'm talking about, because I'm going to explain all the things I mentioned in there. But recommend you go and watch it after this, and I'm also going to link at the end to the full CCTV video because I've cut bits out, but also worth watching that as well. Now, intelligence services, by their very nature, tend to be quite secretive, oddly enough, because if they weren't, they probably wouldn't be very good. So we're quite lucky, I think, in some way, to be able to see this this footage. And my eyes lit up when I found it on YouTube, because it's very, very rare that we get to see intelligence services doing their job, which, I think is fantastic for us, and we're very lucky in that respect. So in January 2010, a 11-person, I'm saying suspected here, because it's not been proved that it was Mossad, although it highly likely was. They murdered a guy called Mahmoud in a hotel in the United Arab Emirates, and supposedly Mahmoud was a Hamas leader. Now, this is really risky, because at the time, Israel and most Arab countries, including the UAE, were technically enemies. They weren't at war as such, but they were enemies. There was no embassy there, so there was no local embassy support. Anything that was Israeli at the time was banned from the UAE, and any newspapers or books that had mention of anything Israeli in them had big black marks through them. Somebody's job was literally to look through anything that came into the country and scour it and go, has it got anything Israeli you mentioned on it? Oh yeah, right. Big black marker pen, let's crash it out. Coca-Cola was banned in the UAE because it was potentially made in Israel. That is how sour the relationship was at the time. So for an 11-man or 11-person team to come in to a foreign country like this was very, very risky. Very, very high-risk operation. Now, it was obviously a very, very skilled team, and we're going to see that on the video, and they left very, very little trace that they were there. But also, and this is something you can ponder about, and you can ponder about if you go and watch the video as well, when they left the victim's room, it was double locked and chained from the inside. I have no idea how they did that. No idea. So they must have been bloody good at what they do. And then Dubai police, they've published the footage, and it follows the entire footage follows their entry into the country, shows them coming into the airport, checking through airport security and things like that. It shows them getting taxis to and from various different hotels. I am not going to show that because it isn't actually very interesting in terms of social engineering. There is lots of tradecraft to be seen there, and if you want to go and watch it, then I'll link the video at the end. But I think it's a 20-minute video, and there's lots of other stuff in there that is interesting. So definitely go and worth watching it. Now, I do have to apologize. The CCTV footage is awful. It is really, really rubbish quality. And if there are any CISSPs out there, take note. CCTV is not quite as good as we think it is, and it hasn't really helped in terms of being able to solve the crime here, because the footage is so poor. They've had to rely on passport photos when they came through airport security to identify the 11-person team. That is how poor the CCTV footage is. So if you are planning on putting CCTV in anywhere, think about the quality and think about how it's going to work for you, because in this instance, it is terrible. And I'm making that apology now because when it comes on a big screen like this, it's going to look rubbish. And I'm sorry for that. I couldn't do anything about it. I'm also going to jump around the timeline of events because I'm interested in the SE techniques. I'm not interested in the murder. So when you go and watch the video yourself, you'll see that I've taken various bits and they've jumped around. That's fine. I'm not interested in the murder. I don't want to know about it really. But I am interested in showing you social engineering techniques. And I'm also going to jump to the point where the suspects have already entered the country and are moving between various hotels, because how they got through airport security and stuff like that is available. The information about that is available, and if you want to go and read about it, I suggest you do. It's quite interesting. But basically, they had dual nationality passports. So when you read up about it, they were Israelis, but they also had British passports, Irish passports, German passports, and stuff like that. And what I've done, essentially, is I've taken all of this footage, and I've just highlighted the SE techniques. Now, as a social engineer, when we are tasked with a job, and whether that's getting into, a casino, an airport, etc., the first thing that we do is reconnaissance, because we want to know what we're facing. What are we looking at? What are the people dressed like? Are they wearing ID badges like this, for example? All that sort of stuff for a social engineer is really, really important and really interesting, and it helps us get in. And I'll explain that in a bit. So let's set the scene here. Dubai is obviously in the United Arab Emirates, or the UAE. It is a business and a tourist destination. I'm going to make that clear because most of the people that we see in the footage are dressed in business sense, but there are some tourists there. We all know about the Palm and all that sort of stuff that's been there recently, probably within the last 7 years or so. But Dubai built their first green grass golf course back in the late 90s, and it has been trying to become a tourist destination since the 90s. So that's an important thing to note. And now bearing in mind this was in 2010, things that were happening, the bad stuff that was happening in Iraq was still happening, And so lots of military contractors that were in Iraq were coming to Dubai to relax as like R&R at the weekends or whenever they had any time off. And part of the reason for that is, as you probably know, most Arabic countries ban alcohol, even in hotels, apart from the UAE. In the UAE, you are allowed to drink alcohol in a hotel. So lots of military contractors go there to take a break. Most of the footage I'm going to show is from inside the hotels. And I'm going to show you some pictures of how the hotel is structured and laid out, because I think that's useful information as well. And another important thing to note is that in Dubai, and in fact most of the UAE, there are no sports facilities. There's no like public swimming pools, for example. There's no public tennis courts and things like that. If you want to go swimming or if you want to go to a beach, you pay a monthly subscription to a hotel and you go and use their facilities. So yeah, if you want to go swimming, you pay the hotel and it's like a gym. It's like we think of a gym over here. It's the same kind of facility over there. So everything sports facility wise is going to be in a hotel, and Dubai residents basically pay a monthly fee and choose which hotel they want to go to and use those sports facilities. And if they've got better squash courts in one or another, that's the one they go to. Again, useful information, and you'll see why in a bit. Now, when you're performing reconnaissance, you don't want to stand out. You know, if I want to go and look at this door over here, I don't want to come here, and I know we've all got amazing high vises on, so I probably would blend in today if I had high vis, but I'm not going to go, oh, great. Door, yeah, okay, yeah, oh, there's a swipe card, yeah, brilliant, okay. You don't want to do that, because you're going to stand out, and someone's going to go, what's that guy doing? So you want to blend in, and one of the things I talk about in my 2018 talk is going and sitting reception and looking at how people dress, because that's quite important. You want to blend in, you don't want to stand out, and we're going to see some ways that these people are blending in. So we mentioned that all the sports facilities are in hotels. Anybody for tennis? So the tennis team, as I've nicknamed them, they've actually been sat in reception. So when the victim entered the country, they weren't sure which hotel he was going to stay in, which one he was going to check into. So they had various teams dotted around the hotel, sat in reception, which is something I recommend doing when you're going and trying to get into a business or an office or something. Go and sit in reception. They are doing exactly this. They are sat in reception waiting for the victim to come in. Now, they've been sat in there for a while, and when the victim checks in, and again, I'm not showing this, but you'll see it in the main video, the guy is checking in, and he's talking to the receptionist, and he's getting his key card, and blah, blah, blah. One of the sports team is literally right here, looking straight at him on the phone, dressed in his tennis gear. Now, I'm assuming that either they didn't hear what room number he was given, or they wanted to go and double check. And so this happens. Now, the guy in the black there is the victim, and the lady that you can see on the left-hand side is a member of the hotel reception team. Now, interestingly, and I've never had this happen to me in many, many hotels that I've had to check in through for work and stuff, she is taking him up to his room to show him where it is. Now, this is quite unusual, but look out for the two guys. They're going to the lift. Woof. Super quick walking. I want to get in that lift with this guy. They come out. She says, we need to go to the left here. The two tennis guys hang around. One of them points to the other guy and says, go on, you go. And watch how slowly he walks, because he doesn't want to catch up with the victim. He just wants to go to the room and see where it is. The other interesting thing on that return journey there is, and it's quite difficult to see, he looks up because there is an emergency exit sign a bit like this, and he is checking where that exit is in case he needs to get out. So the sports team come back. She is obviously very relaxed around the guy in the white t-shirt because they're having a laugh and a joke. Here's me mate. Hi mate. Great, come back. And then they walk around the corridor. So that's one piece of reconnaissance. Really interesting. Amazing how quickly they sped up to get in that lift at the same time as the victim. It was almost a run. But yeah, they get it, and they now know, they've now confirmed what room he's in. What's interesting is you can see here on the right that there's basically a balcony, and there are some chairs down there on that lower floor, and we'll see those in a bit. So another reconnaissance team comes in. You will see in the footage that it's got GNTV in the top corner. Sorry, I should have explained that. It's Gulf News Television. So you'll see that on lots of these pieces of footage. I have called these guys the not-so-sports team because I wasn't quite sure what they were doing. But here they are. Two gents coming in, one in red, one in blue. Got hold all, one guy's on the phone. You can see in that top left-hand corner, some people sat down. I zoomed in a little bit here. Again, apologise for the blurry footage. It's terrible quality CCTV. But we saw there the two guys from the tennis team with the white towel and the blue T-shirt and the guy with the white. And they get up and they walk away. And magically, the not-so-sports team come in and sit in exactly the same spot. Well, that's interesting. Why have they done that? Well, we'll come to that in a bit. So they've been there for an amount of time. I've no idea how long, probably a couple of hours. And, when you're doing reconnaissance, you don't want to hang around in the same place too long, because even being there too long could alert suspicion. So we get some tourists come in to see. Now, the tourists are interesting. Here they are as a lady and a man. And they come in. Now, what I find unusual here, and we'll see this in a second, is they talk about them using special communications devices, and it looks like they're trying to fit an earpiece and a wire and something down on the lady's belt, which I personally find unusual, because that is a very, very public space. You're in a reception of a massive hotel, and there's lots of people around. Why would you fiddle with your communications equipment in that particular spot? Why not do it somewhere else, like out of the way? So that was unusual. But you can see there in the top corner, the not-so-sports team are leaving. If you look really, really carefully, the two tourists actually turn and look at the sports team to say, yeah, we're ready. Then they get up, and then they walk away, and then eventually the tourists go. They're followed by a local Arab gentleman who looks like he's trying to get to the same seats as they are. They spot that, and they jump in there so that they get exactly the same seats. So you've got three different teams sat in the same area, in the same seats over the period of a day, and that is unusual. So a couple of things there. Why were they sat there? Anybody know? Anyone want to shout out why you think he was sat there? Sorry? Nah, almost. Yeah, it's a good idea for sure, and you're almost right. Sorry? Clearest view in the balcony. Absolutely. Yeah. So, and I'll show you some pictures of this in a minute. They were sat there because they could see his corridor, and it's open. The hotel is open inside. So all of the rooms are around the outside of the building, and the inside, the sort of middle core bit, is open all the way up to the very, very top. And there's, if you look at the photos, there's a really beautiful stained glass window glass thing at the very, very top. But they're sat there because they can see the guy's room and his corridor, but also because if they miss him coming out of his room or his corridor, they also get a great view of the reception. And the only entrance, or the main entrance, is that reception area. So they have got this phenomenal view. They can see reception here, and they can see his room and his corridor on the top there. And that is why they sat there. And that's really clever. And when I go into buildings and I try and do reconnaissance, that is exactly the same thing I suggest to anybody who wants to learn this sort of stuff, do exactly the same thing. Go and sit in a place where you can see the maximum amount of information and take it all in, because that's really, really useful. Now, my objectives tend to be a lot different from this team's objectives. Most of my objectives are, can you get into the building? Can you go and plug into a network? Can you go and take the red folder from the finance team? That kind of stuff. But I still want to absorb all of that information about what can I see? How many CCTV cameras are there? What are they wearing? How are they wearing their badges? All of that information, when you're doing reconnaissance, is really, really useful because it helps you build up your pretext. And I'll talk about pretext in a second. So yeah, there's the guy, the sports team, the tennis guy, looking over the balcony. And it's at that point there that he realizes that those chairs in that bottom corner are a great place to be. And this is from the hotel's website itself. And essentially, they're in one of the front corners up there. And they can see his room from that seating area. But yeah, you can see just about the stained glass windows and this inner roof thing, this glass roof. But yeah, that's why they were sat there. And that's really interesting. Okay, so I mentioned it just a second ago. Pretext. Pretexts are interesting. And I talk about pretexts in my 2018 talk. But what is it? What is a pretext? What does it mean? Well, the official sort of dictionary definition, if you like, is a reason given in justification of a course of action that is not the real reason. And I sat and thought, what the hell does that mean? I don't understand what that means. So what does it mean? It basically means it's the lie that you are telling somebody as to why you were there and doing what you were doing. It's your sort of justification, if you like. But obviously isn't the real reason, the real reason for them being there, if they were challenged, is not going to be, hey, we're here to murder somebody. They're not going to say that. They're going to say, oh, I'm here to play tennis, or I'm here to see the sights, or I'm here to go to the gym. So how do we see this in that tennis team? Remember, there are no other tennis courts other than the ones in the hotel. So here is our guy in a white t-shirt. He's obviously wearing shorts. He's obviously wearing trainers. He's got a tennis racket. Now, that's unusual because normally if you go and play tennis, you have a bag or a rucksack. Why is that tennis racket not in his rucksack? Because that's normally how you would carry a tennis racket. And I think it's just because he wants to reinforce the fact that he's here to play tennis. And so he's got it out on show to say, as like a badge almost, hey, I'm playing tennis. Look at me, I've got a tennis racket. Rather than hiding it away in the bag. The other thing that I think is interesting is he's got a brochure. And again, I apologize for the CCTV footage. He's got a brochure in his hand. And I think that he has been to the gym and the tennis area and picked up one of their brochures because it will have the hotel name on it and the logo on it, which again is reinforcing the story as to why he should be there. I'm here to play tennis, look at my tennis racket, and also I've got the hotel's brochure, so I should definitely be in this hotel. And it's just that reinforcement of his story, his pretext to say, yeah, I should be here. Now, the other guy's the same, slightly different outfit. He's got a white towel around him as if to say, hey, I've really played a hard game of tennis. And a bottle of water as well. But looks roughly the same. Again, got his tennis racket out in his hand. It's that reinforcement thing. Hey, I'm here to play tennis. Yeah. And then there's the two other guys walking away. Again, they look like they are here to play tennis. You would not question them as to what else they would be doing because visually it is so obvious they're here to play tennis. So their pretext story is going to be with tennis players. And it worked because nobody questioned them and nobody took a second look at them because they look like tennis players. So let's look at the not-so-sports team. Now, I'm not really sure what their pretext would be. Not sure what they're actually there to do, what their story was. And obviously, we don't get to know that information. So I'm going to make a guess. It's not unusual dress style for the area. They're wearing, sports t-shirts, if you like, tracksuit bottoms, trainers, etc. It's not unusual dress style for the area. They've got a holdall. I did some research on the hotel that this all happened in, and there was a gym there. And my guess is, if anybody asks, they were going to go to the gym, or they've been to the gym, something along those lines. And, the holdalls help reinforce that sort of gym look, if you like. They might have some towels or something in there. It's quite unusual. I couldn't work out what that was. I couldn't work out what their pretext was. I have no idea. I went with the gym look. The tourists. Now, in Dubai, there are, as we know, a lot of tourists. This is a very, very stereotypical tourist look. They've got sun hats, they've got linen trousers. But what I found interesting, and again, these are just hindsight insights, if you like, that we've got, because we've got that ability to look at things in hindsight. Dubai is not warm in January. This happened in January. And the average temperature in Dubai in January, and I say average because that means there's more and less, is only 18 degrees. And it's not a warm 18 degrees, even though we know the Middle East is being super, super hot. It's often very cloudy. There's often a cold wind, and it does rain. Strangely enough, they have about 3 days of rain in the Middle East in January and February. So, okay. I mean, from a pretext point of view, nobody's going to question them because they absolutely look like tourists. That is what a tourist, in our mind's eye, when we think about what a tourist should look like, that's it. But with the ability of hindsight, you just think, okay, this is interesting. Is it really a tourist? I'm not sure. Now I'm going to introduce you to another gentleman who we don't see just yet, but we will see him in a video later. And I've called him the blocker. I think the Dubai police called him Kevin, I believe. Now, Kevin is interesting, and we'll see him in a bit. He is carrying essentially a clipboard with what looks like that same hotel brochure as the tennis players had. He's dressed in a very dull-coloured suit. He's got glasses on. He's got hair, and I'll explain why the hair comment is useful in a bit. And he's got that brochure there. He looks like a hotel employee. He stood outside of the lifts that we saw earlier on the first floor, where we saw the victim being showed to his room in the corridor and a tennis team following him down. He is stood there in this particular still. Now, if I came out of those lifts and I saw him stood there in those colours and things, I'd think he was a hotel employee. He looks like one. And he's got a big smile on his face. He looks nice and friendly. So I think what's really important is matching your outfits to your pretext. Now, in the video, Dubai police say these people are changing their look for a disguise purpose. And I don't think so. I think they're actually changing their outfits to match a pretext. So I'm going to show you a very quick video. Here's a gentleman in a blue tie, bald hair, no glasses, going into some changing rooms with a suitcase. And here he is coming out. The two do not look the same. And that is really clever, because they are the same person, but he's made some very simple changes. Now, this is the lady that we saw a minute ago who was in the sun hat with the tourists. And she goes in, and again, very subtle changes. She's got her hair in a bun. You just see her take her sunglasses off. She comes out. She looks different. And she's pulled her hair down by the side of her face. She's taken her sunglasses off. It looks like she's untucked her blouse a little bit and changed the dress, but not a great deal. Or changed the dress style of the way she's wearing her jacket. But not a great deal. And they are really, really simple things to change how those people look. And I suspect that they brought all of that stuff locally in Dubai. Because if you had a wig in your suitcase, somebody might go, why have you got a wig in your suitcase? So I suspect that they bought all these really simple things in Dubai locally. Now, as I said, Dubai police think this was a disguise. And I'm not convinced it is. I think that they are changing themselves for sure, which I guess is kind of a disguise, but I think they're doing it to match the pretext. And they're going to be hotel employees, and I'll show you a video of both of those two pretending to be hotel employees later. But they are changing their dress style to match their pretext. And I think that's really interesting and very clever as well. And I mentioned this a bit in my previous talk. You know, if you're going to go in somewhere, and one of my common ones, and if you've seen me talk before, I often pretend that my name is Leon and I'm from the IT network team. Dress like that. Bring some things with you, some props and stuff. And similarly, you know, if you're saying that you're going to be an alarm engineer, dress like an alarm engineer. If you were pretending to be an alarm engineer and you turn up in a suit and tie, what you're telling the person who is challenging you and what you look like are two completely different things. And they're not going to match up, and then they're going to go, you don't look like an alarm engineer. I'm going to challenge you even more. Whereas if you dress like an alarm engineer, maybe you've got cargo trousers on and, you know, you've got pockets full of tools or something in there, you're going to look like an alarm engineer. The two things are going to add up, and the person challenging you is going to go, he's telling me he's an alarm engineer. He looks like he's an alarm engineer. Perfect. He's an alarm engineer. He's got to be, right? Props are also really, really useful. Props to support that pretext are really important. Badges, for example. I'm just going to use badges as one particular prop example. Now, being a social engineer and doing lots of these types of jobs, you often build up a collection of badges that look like this. And I'll tell you a story that happened probably beginning of this year. Now, I'm wearing a badge, which you can see on there, that says contractor. And the badge itself is blank. It's got a little barcode on, but there's nothing on the other side. And it literally says contractor. That's all it says. There's no other identification on it whatsoever. Now, at the beginning of the year, I was tasked with getting into an office in central London. And it was a satellite office for an American company. So I thought, okay, I can come up with this. And I went in there. I got onto the floor that they were on. Someone came up to me and went, "Are you okay?" And I went, yeah. I'm from company X, which is the company that I was supposed to be from. And I am over from the US office, and I've come to work in the UK for a week. I hear you've got some hot desks. Can you point them out to me? And the person went, "Oh, yeah, hold on a minute. Come on through into our super secure office. And here's the hot desks for you. And let me show you where the tea and coffee machine is. And I'll take you to show you where the toilets are. And, oh, by the way, would you like to meet our COO and our CEO?" And I was like, "Sure, why the hell not? Well, yeah, I'll meet these people." And it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. Now, the really astute and the really observant among you will realize that I do not have an American accent. And I didn't even try to put one on either, because accents are dodgy and they often slip, and then you get caught and stuff like that, and it's not a good idea. So I said I was from the US office, and I said I was a contractor. And the only piece of evidence, if you like, that I was any of those things was this contractor lanyard on my chest. That was it. But because I said I was a contractor, and because I've got a prop that reinforced that, they believed me. And they were like, "Yes, come on in, come on in." What was also crazy is they tried to give me a visitor's badge because the toilets were in a stairwell which was swipe controlled, and they couldn't get the visitor badge system working. They couldn't activate one of the visitor's badges. So they went to the COO and said, "Hey, do you mind if Leon borrows your badge for a second so he can go to the toilet?" "Yeah, sure, no problem, here you go." And I had the COO's badge for the day. There was no verification, no nothing. It was just 1 + 1 = 2. He said he's a contractor. He's got a contractor lanyard on. Let him in. Another another war story, if you like, around props. And this was a job that I luckily got to do with a colleague of mine, a guy called Luke. Hey, Luke. We went to a manufacturing facility not far from here, actually. And we've been tasked with getting in. We got in quite easily, unfortunately. And we set ourselves up in an office. We found a nice empty office. We set ourselves up in there. It was fantastic. We were all cozy. The client contact came to us and said, right, it's brilliant that you've got here. It was too easy. I want to set you another challenge. Now, this often happens when you do social engineering. You get in somewhere, and unfortunately, the client contact goes, oh, that was too easy. What difficult thing can I set them to do that they're going to fail at? I know. You need to get into our server room. Okay, yeah, we'll give that a go. So we ditched our rucksacks, and we literally carried a laptop. And we knew where the server room was because we'd walked around the building earlier. And Luke and I, we get up to the server room, and we look around, and we'd got like a badge on, and we're pressing it against the ID badge system, the swipe card system. Nothing happens. A lady walks past and goes, are you two all right? And we said, yeah. Could you help us? We're BT engineers, and we need to do some software upgrades on your telephone system, but unfortunately we can't get into the server room. Now, we had smart trousers on, we had a polo shirt on. It had a logo on, but it wasn't a BT logo. And we had a laptop. And so we got these props that made us look like we were BT engineers. And then we said we're doing a software upgrade, so we've got a laptop in our hand, which you need to do a software upgrade, right? And she went, oh, okay, hold on a minute. And she brought her badge up. You're not coming in. Oh, she said, hold on a minute. And she walked into that floor's office and she went, hey, everybody, these two guys need to get into the server room. Has anybody got a badge that works on the server room door? And literally everybody in that office got up and came out, let me try mine. No, it doesn't work. Okay, your turn. Next person comes up. No, it doesn't work either. Next one comes up. The whole office tried. None of their badges worked. And the original lady went, oh, I know. Hold on a second. And she marched off. And she came back 30 seconds later, and she had another badge in her hand. She put it up against the system, and it went, ding, you can go in. Oh, yeah, it's okay. I just went to the CFO's office and borrowed his badge. Okay. And she let us in. We sat in the server room. We did our software upgrade, which was basically us plugging into the network and hacking it from in there. We took some photos of us in the server room, sent them to the client, and he went, I need a harder challenge. But the crucial bit there is, if you're going to come up with a story for a pretext, think about what else you need to support that story. And think about how you can reinforce it. And as we've seen in these videos, it doesn't even need to be that strong a thing. It can be so loose. You know, we were in polo neck shirts and some smartish trousers. We said we're a BT engineer. We had a laptop. That was it. That was all that I had, or we had rather, Luke and I had, to convince somebody that that's what we should be doing. Likewise, in the US office thing, in the UK office, I said I was a contractor. I had a contractor badge, a lanyard on. That is it. But to the person questioning you, they're going to go 1 + 1 = 2. Ding, you can go in. So think about those props and those pretexts. Excuse me 1 second. I'm going to have some water. Okay. One of the other things that I suggest doing when you're doing reconnaissance is hanging around. Now, if I'm hanging around a very super secure door like this, and I'm sort of stood there like this, like just looking at the door, waiting for somebody to come in so I can tailgate them in, I'm going to look suspicious. And somebody's going to go, What are you doing? And that's, as a social engineer, not what you want to happen. You want to blend in. You want to look like you should be there. And the easiest way to do this is on a phone, really. So we've got these two people here, and they are hanging around outside the first floor lift. But again, the gentleman on the left there, who we saw earlier, is now wearing a wig and some glasses. He's got a phone in his hand, and I'm going to show you a video of that in a second. And then the lady that we saw, she's got some paperwork, and she's clutching that to her chest, and she looks like she's a hotel employee. Two very good ways of validating, if you like, that it's okay for those people to be there. Now, I've called these two, if you like, the watch out team, because we saw them from that disguise video earlier. And the male guy, Kevin, he hangs around outside the lift for a long time, and then the lady in the video has disappeared. I think she's disappeared because she was at the opposite end of the corridor, where we saw the tennis guy looking over the balcony earlier. I think she's up there because his room, the victim's room, is in the middle between the lifts and that end point. So I think they're in there. But they're doing this on purpose because they're trying to cover any sort of entry and exit points. And at this particular moment in time in the video, the victim has gone out and he's gone shopping. And so his room is unguarded, if you like. And again, I'm not going to show this because I don't think it's that relevant. But they try and reprogram one of their own hotel badges to the same room number as his to try and get into his room to surprise him when he comes back. It doesn't actually work, which is interesting. Because I suspect, having done some jobs in the Middle East, that the hotel door keycard system is probably not that clever and not that good. So it is unusual that reprogramming of the door didn't work. My guess is he didn't have a lot of tools and stuff with them, because if they came through airport security and airport security said, "What's this thing here?" "Oh, that's a keycard reprogrammer." "Whoa, why have you got that?" I think they didn't have a lot of technology, or didn't bring a lot of technology with them, and so had to buy stuff that was local. That is my guess. But it failed, and they found another way in. But what's interesting, these are the lifts. These are the lifts on the first floor. This is not the reception lists. We're going to see the guy literally pacing up and down. I'm on the phone. And he's there for a long time. But it's not suspicious activity. It's not unusual for people to be hanging around on phones outside lifts, especially because most of us know if we go in the lift, it's a big metal box, you lose your phone signal and you can't make a phone call anymore. So you would naturally stand outside the lift and complete your phone call before going in. And again, it's all these small little details that make these things work. So it is a really, really great trick, because again, if I was up at this secure door, and rather than me standing here looking at the secure door, waiting for someone to come in so that I can tailgate them in, if I'm on the phone like this and I'm going, "Hi, yeah, how are you doing today? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Oh, someone's going in. Yeah, no, I'm just coming into the office now." Boom, I go straight in. And that's roughly what they're doing there. Pretending to be on the phone is a really, really great trick. Because no one's going to bother you when you're on the phone, right? We're all polite human beings, and nobody wants to interrupt a phone call to go, "Excuse me, what are you doing here?" Nobody does that, because we're all polite and we're all helpful and nice. So it's really, really useful. It's a great way to hang around somewhere and not look too suspicious, because that's what people do when they take phone calls. They hang around on the phone and wander about. Because, yeah, you're just on the phone. Now, this is an interesting part of the video, and it's quite difficult because of the way that the Gulf News Television put subtitles along the bottom. It's quite difficult to see it, so I've tried to zoom in as much as possible. But when the two of them are trying to get in, or the other part of the team is trying to reprogram the victim's door his key card and try and get in, a genuine hotel customer comes out of the lift on that floor. Now, if you're an assassination squad, you don't want to be caught in the act of trying to reprogram someone's door. And so some interesting things happen. And yeah, I've tried to show it as best I can. It's difficult. I will explain it. So the genuine customer comes out. The gentleman, Kevin, literally magically appears as soon as he hears the lift door go bing. He magically appears from around the corner and he intersects, if you like, the customer. And he's got his notepad with him as well, and he's got that brochure that we saw earlier. And again, I think he's got that brochure because it's got logos on it, which have got the hotel name on it. And again, it all reinforces that idea that he should absolutely be there. But yeah, there's something going on down the corridor that he does not want this hotel customer to see. And so he needs to stop this customer to get the team time to get out and get away. So let's watch this. Here's the genuine customer coming out. He's looking a little lost. Boom! Kevin's appeared out of there. He's got his notepad. And he does this. He does a very subtle hand symbol. He doesn't do this because that would be rude. He does this. And it's a very subtle hand signal to say, whoa there, sunshine. I don't want you to go any further. Please stop here because there's some bad stuff going on down there. And it's really, really subtle. It's so subtle, it's really difficult to see, and the subtitles don't help. So I've tried to take the video and zoom in on it a little bit. He literally takes his hand off of his notepad and does that. And the customer stops. Now, he's also blocking that archway so that the customer can't walk down the corridor. But it's really, really subtle. But it worked. And because he's got that persona of I'm a hotel employee, I look like a hotel employee, I've got my notepad, I've got my brochure, he's not going to question it. He's not going to go, get out of my way. He's literally going to go, oh, you can help me because you're smiling and you've got all the notepad and stuff like that. And he interacts with him. And it gives the team behind in the corridor enough time to get out and move. Now, the other interesting thing that happens as well, and I ummed and ahed about including this, and I talked it over with my wife, and we said, actually, this is quite interesting. It's an interesting maneuver. I've never done this or had to do it, but I can see why it's there. And you may come across an opportunity or a thing, a situation where you might need to use this. I've called it the block. And what happens is, I'll show you the video. Let's see if we can work it out. So same thing. Customer comes out. Now watch what Kevin does here. He interacts with the customer. He does the stop symbol. He's blocking that archway behind so the guy can't get to the corridor. They look at the key card that the customer's got and try to work out, I don't know what the conversation is, it goes on a little while. But they're trying to work out what's on the key card so we can try and help the customer get to his room. So they look at the key card. Now what's really interesting is the way, first of all, Kevin puts his notepad. He is creating a barrier between him and the customer by putting that notepad there. And he's changed hands. But he's also making the customer look that way when the hallway is that way, which is clever. But again, he's using that notepad as a barrier against the customer. And then, as the customer works out where he's going, he's creating another block. And then he walks slowly and kind of walks in front of the customer to slow him down. And then stops in the archway so the customer can't get through. Now, that's actually really clever. I don't think in most cases as a social engineer we would need to use that. I've not come across a situation where I needed to block somebody. But it's very subtle and it's very effective because it obviously gave the team who were trying to break into the guy's room enough time to get out. What are we doing? Okay. So let's wrap this up a little bit. If this was Mossad, we have just witnessed possibly some of the best social engineers in the world. And they literally did get away with murder. They left the country 2 hours after they committed the murder, and they've never been seen again. So these techniques that we're seeing here are so good that they literally got away with murder. They're obviously very, very well drilled. They'd obviously got a lot of backup and stuff. They'd obviously done lots of practice in terms of doing the changeover for the reconnaissance in that hotel reception, which is very clever. The blocking stuff was very clever. The little hand gesture was very clever. The ability to blend in and stuff in a foreign country that you're technically enemies with. No embassy support. And, you know, as we're seeing with lots of countries at the moment, we're getting embassy staff expelled because they're spies and stuff like that. There was none of that local support there for them in this country. So risky. As I mentioned earlier, I have no idea how they got out of the hotel room with the double lock on the chain and no signs of forced entry or anything like that. So that's really interesting. I have no idea how they did that. And the original video is here. And I will post this up on Twitter somewhere. And that's roughly it. Thank you very much for listening. If anybody's got any questions, I believe there is a gentleman with a microphone going around. Stick your hands up. Where is the gentleman with the microphone? Yeah, absolutely. You're not Mossad, are you? Okay, good. I actually had a bit of nerves around presenting this and whether there would be any repercussions. And I thought, well, you know, it's a long time ago. It's quite a while ago. Is there a gentleman with a microphone, or are we just going to have to shout them out? No? Okay. Yeah, to go on some questions. Sorry? What did he say? Okay. I tell you what, let's just shout them out. Gentleman with the mask, and I see you hand up pretty quickly. Yeah, I can hear you. Mm-hmm. So the question was, just in case somebody can hear it, the team that were messing around, the tourist team that were messing around with the communications equipment in the lobby, were they possibly trying to smoke out other covert intelligence? Possibly, but it would seem a little weird to burn yourself, because if you did smoke out covert intelligence or an opposing covert intelligence agency, you'd burn that team. And you'd probably then trigger an alert, and the other stuff on the CCTV would be looked at and reviewed quickly. So maybe, but I'm not sure. I agree. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There's got to be a reason. I think it's very difficult for us to know what that reason would be. But yeah, I'm sure they're doing it for a reason. I have no idea what it would be. It's like you say, it's bad OPSEC, but there must have been a reason. Either it was broken and they had a spare, or the battery died. I have no idea. But yeah, it's an unusual thing to do. If that had been me, I'd have gone out and done it outside in a quiet area rather than in the centre of a massive lobby where it's very visible. Okay, another question. Gentleman in the white t-shirt. Hello. Okay, so the question was, when I was reviewing the video, was there any obvious mistakes? No, not really. Obviously, the OPSEC thing with the mic was weird. The communications device was strange. The fact that the door recloning, whatever that was, didn't work was unusual, but bearing in mind there was no local embassy support, and so no fellow spies, if you like, to be able to hand them electronic equipment that they'd acquired elsewhere or they'd bought in through diplomatic bags, etc., was unusual for that failing. But they still got in, and they still achieved their goal. So yeah, little tweaks maybe, but ultimately they did what they came to do. So yeah, not really, I don't think. Other questions? I can see a gentleman. Sorry, I'll come back to you. I can see a gentleman in a black t-shirt. Shout it out. Okay. Yeah. Okay, good questions. So I'll be perfectly honest. Because of COVID, the amount of social engineering jobs I'm doing is lessened. They're still there, and they're still ticking along, and still getting more, questions about doing them, and inquiries and scoping and stuff like that. So they're still there, but they've dropped a bit. And I think that's because we've pushed everybody to work from home more, and so the attack vector, if you like, is changing, because people are not necessarily always in the office these days. It hasn't affected me too much in terms of the way I approach jobs, because of most of the jobs that I've had to do since sort of the unlocking of lockdown has still been trying to go into facilities or offices or things like that. So most of the ones that I've been tasked with doing have still had some kind of person in an office or in an area, and I've tried to emulate that. I've not got to the point, or I've not been asked to do any jobs where an office was empty. And so I've not had to change my approach in that way, but I imagine it would come. And sorry, please repeat your first question again. Yeah. Yes, okay, sorry. If you watch the video, it looks like they tried to clone the maid's card. And in the beginning of that sort of section, and again, I've cut it out, but in the beginning of the section where the two people are outside the lifts, there was a trolley, a maid's trolley in the corridor behind them. So I think, and this is a massive guess, that they tried to clone her card, the maid's card, in some way. But yeah, again, there are so many bits of this that we're trying to jigsaw piece together that we don't know it all, and it's quite difficult. But that would be my guess. They did, and I didn't mention this because, again, it wasn't too relevant, they did hire or rent the room directly opposite the victims. So they had their own key card, and I think the victim's room was 230, and they hired 237, which was literally opposite. So either they tried to get the maid's card and clone it, or they took their own card and tried to reprogram it in some way. Probably with something on a mobile phone, an app or something they got on a mobile phone. But it wasn't successful. And in the video, they show you the logs of the failed entry as well, weirdly in reverse time order. Okay, so there's a gentleman there with your hand up. Yeah. Yeah. It's a really easy answer, but difficult to implement. I always say, trust but verify. Trust the fact that I'm a BT engineer, but go away and verify it. Go away, because we're not always very confident about challenging people face to face because it's an awkward thing to do, and we're polite most of the time. Go away and trust that, take that information, trust it, but go away and verify it. Hey, reception, if you just let 2 BT engineers in, have they signed in and stuff? Or go to the guy who is in charge of the server room and go, are you expecting some BT engineers? Trust but verify what is being said, and then come back with either a gang of muscly people to throw them out or whatever. But yeah, my suggestion is trust but verify. Go away and verify the information you're being told. Yes? So because we do this professionally, we're given something called a get out of jail free letter. And the get out of jail free letter is something from the CEO or the CIO or the CISO, whatever, to say, Chris is supposed to be here. you caught him and he looks suspicious. Fantastic, that's really good. But he's supposed to be here. Don't chuck him in prison, kind of thing. Do I get nervous? Absolutely. Even to this day, I get nervous at doing social engineering jobs because, we're built as human beings to not break into things. We're told by our parents, don't break into things. That's a bad thing to do. And that's quite difficult to get over. The social engineering into an airport was absolutely the scariest social engineering job I've ever done because they have guns and a lot of them. And they are looking, or I thought, turns out they weren't, looking for people like me trying to break into an airport. Turns out they weren't very good at that. And I went in and out 5 times because I didn't believe how easy it was. But it's still exceptionally nerve-wracking for sure. Any more questions? I'm conscious of time here. Gentleman over there in a grease jet. Yeah, I thought about this. I thought about this a lot. My guess is they used the window to get out. It's the only thing I can think of. I don't know. Yeah, I have not looked at the hotel from the outside, so I'm not sure. But yeah, all of the hotel rooms are on the outside. And that's the only thing I can think of that would potentially work for them to be able to get out. Right, I'm very conscious that it's time for me. My Twitter handle is on there. My LinkedIn is on there. My previous SteelCon talk is on there. If you get any questions and they've not had a chance to ask them, come and stop me. Come and ask me today. I'm going to be around all day. Come and say hi. Come and ask me questions. Or if you don't want to do it in person, do it online. Thank you.